He screwed the janitor. The janitor didn't talk back. And when the truth came out, the whole office stopped murmuring too. Watch this powerful story, and tell us, have you ever underestimated someone? Drop your story in the comments. Let's share your story, it might get someone out of a bad mood. It happened on the busiest morning of the year. The office was buzzing with suits, cell phones, and caffeine-fueled chaos as clients filled the conference room and executives barked orders down the halls. That's when he noticed the janitor, pushing his squeaky cart down the center aisle at the exact wrong time, blocking his path. Ryan, the youngest, flashiest manager on the floor, didn't even slow down. "Move it," he snapped, waving dismissively like the man was a piece of furniture. The janitor froze for just a second, then quietly steered his cart against the wall. Ryan didn't thank him. He didn't even look at him. But he did smirk to himself as he strode past, muttering just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Probably the only thing he's ever been good at, sweeping floors. A couple of junior staffers chuckled awkwardly. The janitor didn't say a word. He just watched Ryan walk away, then went back to his work. Be honest, how would you feel if you saw someone talk to another person like that? Would you speak up? Or stay quiet? Tell me in the comments. I'd really like to hear your take on moments like this. Later that afternoon, the conference room was packed. All the big names in the company were there. Board members, senior partners, even a few investors. Ryan sat near the front, adjusting his tie and scrolling through his phone, not even glancing up as the CEO called the meeting to order. Then, the doors at the back opened, and in walked the janitor. Same coveralls. Same quiet expression. Ryan's head shot up, his brow furrowing. What was he doing in here? Even the CEO stopped mid-sentence, then smiled faintly and said, "Ah, there he is." Ryan's smirk faltered, because everyone in the room was now looking at the janitor. The janitor didn't hesitate. He walked calmly to the front of the room, his boots squeaking slightly against the polished floor, and set down his gloves on the edge of the conference table. Ryan blinked, glancing around, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell the man to leave. But no one did. In fact, the CEO stood and extended a hand. "Thank you for joining us," the CEO said warmly. "We were just about to begin." The janitor shook his hand politely, then turned to face the room. "Good afternoon," he said in a deep, clear voice that carried all the way to the back. And just like that, the room fell completely silent. Gone was the awkward chuckle Ryan had heard earlier that morning. Gone was the shuffling of papers, the murmuring between assistants. Everyone's eyes were on him. And for the first time all day, Ryan felt something cold settle in the pit of his stomach. The janitor, still dressed in his coveralls, reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a slim leather folder. He opened it and began speaking with quiet authority. "As you know, the acquisition you've been discussing for the last 6 months has been under private review. I've spent the better part of this quarter analyzing the company you're about to bring under your umbrella." The CEO nodded. "And what did you find?" The janitor's lips curved into the faintest smile. "That is why I'm here." Ryan's eyes darted to the CEO, then back to the janitor, or whoever he was. What was going on? Why was nobody stopping him? If you were sitting in Ryan's seat right now, how would you feel? Embarrassed? Curious? A little scared? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you'd be thinking if you suddenly realized you'd misjudged someone this badly. The janitor, no, the man, laid out his findings in precise, confident words, backed up by slides and figures he'd clearly spent months compiling. Fraud. Mismanagement. Buried liabilities. Every red flag Ryan had breezed past, this man had found. And now, he was exposing them all. At one point, the CEO even said quietly, "Your work may have just saved us millions." Ryan sank lower in his chair, his cheeks burning. Because now he realized. This wasn't the janitor. This was the auditor. And Ryan had mocked the one person in the room with the power to undo him completely. The room stayed quiet long after the auditor, still in his coveralls, finished speaking. One by one, executives glanced at each other, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The board members murmured among themselves, their expressions grave. The CEO finally stood and offered his hand again. "Outstanding work," he said, his voice carrying a note of deep respect. "We would have walked straight into a disaster if not for you. I don't know how to thank you enough." The auditor nodded modestly, tucking his folder back into his pocket. "No thanks needed," he replied simply. "Just keep your eyes open next time." A faint ripple of chuckles moved through the room, though no one dared laugh too loud. And then his gaze landed squarely on Ryan. For the first time all morning, Ryan felt himself squirm under the weight of someone else's silence. The auditor didn't say a word. He didn't have to. That quiet, steady stare said everything. It said, "I saw you. I heard what you said. And I won't forget it." Ryan cleared his throat and muttered, "Good presentation." But the words sounded hollow even to him. The auditor didn't respond. He simply picked up his gloves and walked out of the room the same way he'd come in, calm, quiet, and completely in control. The CEO clapped his hands to bring the meeting back to order, but Ryan could feel the glances from his colleagues now. The ones who'd heard him earlier. The ones who'd laughed with him. Nobody was laughing anymore. Be honest. Have you ever seen someone get humbled like this? Or maybe you've been on the receiving end of that quiet kind of justice. Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear how it made you feel. When the meeting finally adjourned, Ryan didn't stay to chat. He grabbed his folder, avoided everyone's eyes, and slipped out a side door. But even as he walked down the hall, the words kept echoing in his head. Keep your eyes open next time. And for the first time in his young, flashy career, he knew he would. That night, Ryan sat at his desk long after everyone else had left. The office was quiet now, the kind of quiet that made you think about things you'd rather forget. In front of him lay the morning's meeting notes, still open to the auditor's report. But it wasn't the numbers or charts he was thinking about. It was the look. That quiet, steady look the man had given him. Ryan leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. He thought about how he'd strutted through the hall earlier that day, too busy and too important to notice anyone else. How he'd made the people around him laugh at someone who'd done nothing wrong. And how wrong he'd been. For the first time in his life, Ryan realized something. You never know who you're talking to. He picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the janitorial department's number. He hesitated. Then he tapped call. It rang once. Twice. "Hello." The voice on the other end was quiet, but Ryan recognized it instantly. "Hey," Ryan said, clearing his throat. It's me. From earlier. I just wanted to say I was out of line." A long pause. Then the voice replied. "I know." Ryan managed a small, self-deprecating smile. "Well," he said, "I'll try to do better." There was another pause. Then, faintly, "That's all anyone can do." Ryan set the phone down, feeling lighter somehow. Not because he'd been forgiven, but because he'd learned something. And the next morning, when the same man passed him in the hall, still wearing his coveralls, still pushing his squeaky cart, Ryan stepped aside and nodded respectfully. The man nodded back. Nothing more needed to be said. "Now it's your turn. What would you have done in Ryan's place? Have you ever misjudged someone and had to face the truth? Tell your story in the comments below. Someone watching this right now might really need to hear it.